My mother's very conservative. I was single for 14 years, raising 2 boys. And every time I would come to Texas, my mother would say, "You keep your eyes open." I said, "For what?" She said, "A God-fearing, Bible-believing woman." My mother's a King James Version, front row, Bible spitting, spewing, John 3:16, "For God so loved the world, you better have your life right, Baptist." And if you ever sit beside my mother in an airplane, I will make you one promise. You're going to meet God. You will have an introductory course. The reason I'm here is because of a mother. I was raised at the knee of a highly Christian principled woman. I remember when I read that about Zig Ziglar, and I was so enamored with it. And then I started thinking about my mom, and then all of a sudden, yes, fast forward, here I am in Galveston, Texas, in February of 2016, doing a program called Making a Difference based on a book that I wrote called Making a Difference, a matter of purpose, passion, and pride. And yet the book, the significance of the book, the foreword to that book is written by the iconic founder of Southwest Airlines, Mr. Herb Kelleher. I'm flying to Texas back when the book is finished. My mother wants to come. She thinks it's the greatest. So I said, "Mom, it's one of those moments, it's a pinnacle in your career. It's going to be so iconic to meet this innovator, this person who believes that making a difference, the moments that matter." My mother says, "I'm going." I said, "You and me, we're going to Texas." She's all excited. We get down, I'll never forget. How many ever flown Southwest Airlines? I love Southwest. Open seating. My mother she's confused. She said, "Explain it one more time." I go, "Mom, we're in boarding group A. As a matter of fact, I think we'll board first." I said, "We're fine. We're going to get on the plane. We're going to pick any seat we want." She said, "Any seat?" I go, "Any seat." We're going down to Jetway. Here's what my mother says to me. She said, "I wonder who God pre-assigned to sit by me." I said, "Mother, it is open seating. There are no assigned seats." My mother says this to me, "Oh, there's assigned seats, son. God has a blueprint for your life, and there will be somebody sit beside me that needs to hear the gospel of Jesus Christ." And I said, "All right." We get on the plane first. First 2 to board, I take 7 Charlie. I do what any son would do. I put her across the aisle. I put her in 7 David. Why? I don't want anybody to sit by me. Come on. You're successful for a reason. When you're successful, what do? You strategically think beyond where you're at. See beyond. So I did. Nobody ever sits beside me when I fly Southwest Airlines. I've got a bulletproof technique. I first start by doing this. I pick an aisle seat, and then I begin to... I add visuals. I've incorporated wearing a little white mask and sprinkling water on my face. I look cold, I look clammy, I look sick. I've even been known to pull out a vomit bag and sit there. Don't look at me hypocritical. I got 2 people right now that I can see giving me one of these. Yeah, well, there's not a person in here that flies that the first thing you don't do is you don't sit down in that seat. I don't care if it's a seat-assigned flight or what. You sit down in that seat, and the first thing you do is you look up and you watch everybody board. And you're doing this. Oh, dear God, no. My mother looks at me, she said, "You're fidgeting." I said, "I'm not fidgeting." She said, "You are fidgeting." She said, "You are worried about who's going to sit by me." I go, "Yeah." I go, "Mom, people want to relax. They want to read." I said, "They want to work." She said, "All right, I'll make you a promise. Whoever sits beside me in this flight, if they do not mention God or religion first, I won't." I said, "Repeat." She said, "Whoever sits beside me," my mother's very articulate. She said, "If they do not initiate a conversation that brings God or religion into the conversation before I do, I won't." I said, "You promise?" She said, "I promise." Yes. 50-minute flight. Here he comes. Boarding group C. Last passenger. Pretentious. How do I know? He had the look. He's got a Gucci bag. I don't like men with Gucci bags paying $69 for an airline ticket. I don't trust them. But he walked on, he got to row 7. When he gets to row 7, he looks at me. I'm leaning so far into the middle seat, you can't see the middle seat. And I subliminally did this. I don't think so. And I don't think it was subliminal because I said to the guy, yeah, I don't think so. That's the way I roll. He looks at my mother, who has made me a promise, and ladies and gentlemen, you will never forget probably what he said to her or what she said back to him. Because, man, I hear it every day. I'm sitting there minding my own business. Here comes this guy. I don't think so. He looks at my mother. He points to an empty seat beside her. And I don't know what he's going to say. And he points and says, ma'am, is that seat saved? You know, all I heard my mother say is not about the seat, but I am. I'm like, here we go. And if you didn't understand that, ask somebody that did. That probably help you later in life. But a woman I got to introduce. I'll introduce after I ask you a question. If I said, answer this question, what 5 people made the biggest difference in your life? What 5 people would you write down on a sheet of paper if you had to list out who made the biggest difference in your life? Who would it be? But then I want to ask you to answer this question. Beside those 5 people, ask yourself this. What did they give you? We're not done. You list the 5, you ask, what did they give you? You write it down. No, we're not done. Then I want to ask you this. Is what they gave you a part of you? And have you paid it forward? Because you see, I believe this, that one person in this room, I believe a company such as yours, you've made a huge difference. But what some days you don't realize is that one person in one given moment can change the lives of millions through a single moment. Here, it can be through a single conversation, a single transaction. Why do I say that prior to introducing this other person? Because this other person is on my list of 5. My mom is 1A, this person is 1B, because there could not be a number 2. I discussed it with my mother. I said, Mom, I said, I really want to identify. She said, make her 1A, I'll be 1. She said, just know this, that you were one blessed man to have encountered her. When this woman passed away that I'm about to describe to you, when she passed away and I was asked to speak at her funeral, 800 people attended. They didn't know me. Some did, but most were there to pay tribute to a woman who they all said the same thing. She just impacted people. I just heard that in the last 60 minutes from this stage. I didn't say it. Somebody else said, the impact, the impact, the impact. Powerfully simple. The impact that we make every day. But you know what some of us do every day? We get up and we do it, 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 and we forget why we do it. Let's circle back. You weren't given a bookmark just to be given a bookmark. You were given a bookmark because I'm going to make 3 words come to life. Purpose, passion, and pride. Why do you do what you do? That's the purpose. That's the drive. Passion. That's the fuel. Pride. It defines who you are every single day. I work hard at what I do. I work hard at a craft. I study comedians. I read. How many? I read 36 books a year. 36. But I'm an author, but I read. Why? I want to get better. I want to get better. You see, what ends up happening is we end up going through it day in and day out and day in and day out, and we forget that a single moment can change a life. The woman you're about to hear about made my top 5. I got promoted to be an executive at a very large company. A couple of you right now just went, how did this knucklehead become an executive? Well, at least I'll be honest. I figured I had 2 ways to do it. Number 1, have a relative working in human resources. That would be handy. or just be gifted at. I had no relatives, but I was gifted. Now I'm told I'll be assigned a secretary, which I am like fired up. Again, don't look at me hypocritical. I was young and I was single. I was about to get a secretary, and I had a vision. Under 30, female, named Buffy. Typing was optional. They gave me Margaret. 37 years in the company. She's 3 years away from being there 40 years. I said to a friend of mine, I said, how would you handle this? He said, what? I said, I'm going to be working with my grandmother as my secretary. You know what he said to me? First day you meet this woman, you put the hammer down and let her know who the boss is. How many think that worked out well? Before I ever meet her, she begins to teach me. You're like, what? Before I ever meet her, she begins to teach me. You see, she spent 2 weeks finding out everything she could about me. Later, she would tell me that the reason why she did it, she was taught early in her life that when you prepare hard, it allows you to finish easy. You prepare hard, it allows you to finish easy. You don't rest on your laurels. You know the thing I'm proud of? 38%, and this is a fact, this is not just some number in the air, 38% of the clients who have hired me to speak have brought me back a second and a third time. Why? Because when you bring me back the next time, I'm not speaking about making a difference. I'm speaking about enjoying the ride. And there's not a single story that's repeated. There's not a single quote. Why? Prepare hard. It allows you to finish easy. I've heard professional speakers, I've heard comedians, I've gone back 2 years later, and I've heard the same exact speech. Same exact. Maybe a few stories changed. Margaret would teach me, prepare hard, finish easy. She finds out something else about me. She finds out I'm a perfectionist. She finds out that as I sat backstage back here and I saw the fuel tube, I want you to scream, shout, and raise your hand if you in this room saw what I saw on that visual. There was a screw missing. Who's with me? Thank you so much. Look at some of you going, what? The visual, fuel tube, screw at the top, screw at the side, there was an empty hole. I said to Shannon, there's a screw missing. And he went, yeah, okay. And for those of you that aren't perfectionists, I got 3 words for you. Don't touch it. Margaret finds out I'm a perfectionist. It's key to the story. What happens next? There's a woman standing at my door. No, no, no. Let's back up, shall we? I walk into the building that morning, and there's a receptionist, a lovely woman who used to say, hey, Steve, how's it going? I'd say, hey, Donna, how are you doing today? Hey, how are the kids? How was your weekend? Here's what I said to her that morning. Donna, my secretary arrives this morning. I'm going to put the hammer down. There's a new big man on campus. I'm going to intimidate her. Yeah, that didn't work, because when I said, Donna, my secretary arrives this morning, she said this to me. I know. I said, what's so funny? She said, you don't know Margaret. Really? I said, give her a message from me. You tell her there's a new sheriff in town. I'm walking away. She said, okay, deputy. I'm about to meet a sheriff named Margaret. There's a woman in my door. I look up. I said kindly, you must be Margaret. She looks at me soft-spoken and very respectful and says, Mr. Gilliland, in this executive setting, as your executive secretary, I have a preference. You refer to me as Mrs. Shannon. I'll refer to you as Mr. Gilliland. How does that sit with you? Let me ask you a question. Have you ever had a person try to get your goat? Now, you know it happens all the time. I got into this hotel. Now, this is a lovely, 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 lovely hotel. It's perfect. But I love when people do this to me. Last night I got here, and the girl at the front desk, and a lovely girl, sweet, kind, she said this to me. Do you have a reservation? And you just know my personality. When I looked at her, I said, nope. I said, I woke up this morning in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I said, you know what? I should go to Galveston. Ever been there? I heard they got a water park or something close by. So I flew into Houston. Then I just took a car and started driving. And the wind was blowing me all over the highway. Then I got here and thought, you know, I should just bring my luggage in just for giggles. And then I looked at her and I said, I'm being stupid. I said, I just come in here to say hi to you. I went into a Taco Bell one night down in Lubbock, Texas, right? I'm on Avenue Q. Anybody know where I'm talking about? Avenue Q, Lubbock, Texas. I walk in there and there's a kid laying on the cash register like this, like real lethargic, apathetic. I mean, you know, because when you see people like this, your first thought should be what? Who hired this person? I mean, who actually saw this apathetic, lethargic, terrible attitude and said, hey, let's put him at the counter so he can meet people? He said this to me. I get to the front of the line, he went like this to me, he goes, what's up? I said, what's up? He said, you need something. I said, I want a beef burrito, but I'm extremely worried. He said, what are you worried about? I said, I don't think you have the energy to go get it. He said he was burned out. I said, you're not burned out. He said, how do you know? I said, I don't think you've ever been lit. You can't burn out unless you've been on fire. Last night, my driver, and I like, his name was Glenn. Now, Glenn was like talking from the moment I hit. As soon as I get in the car with Glenn, he is blah, 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 blah. He's talking about who he just picked up, who he dropped off. Glenn was a charming man, right? But here I am a little bit tired, but I'm thinking, no, I'm not doing it. He's a great guy. And I said, Glenn, would you do me a favor? Could we go by, and I wish I had Glenn here today, because Glenn said, if you need me, man, he said, I'll come in and verify all this happened. I said, can we go to Whataburger? I said, when I'm in Texas, I like Whataburger, except when I'm in the Dallas area. And then I go to In-N-Out Burger. Well, we go to Whataburger last night. We pulled up. I have no idea where we're at. We pulled up, and he rolls down the back window. And the kid says this to us. I have no idea what that man said. Not like Glenn's in the front going, what'd he say? I said, I have no idea. Now, Glenn's about to lose it, because when this kid says, the guy tells you, I said, yeah, I want a chicken. Glenn's up there in the front seat. And I hear him going, he goes, that's hilarious, that's hilarious. And the kid come back, I said, he goes, I think he said, I didn't understand, could you repeat your order? But we didn't know what it goes. And Glenn's going, there, he's doing it again. He's doing it again. I said, yeah, I want a chicken. Glenn's now the driver. He has laid down in the front seat. He's laughing so hard. I've lost my driver. It's what he said next. Not, you know, and I'm like, the last thing he says to me, pull around, there's something wrong with the speaker. Glenn shoots back up, he goes, whoa. He goes, I didn't see that one coming. Let me tell you something. When she told me her preference, she looked at me and says, I prefer that you call me Mrs. Shannon, and I'll call you Mr. Gilliland. She said, how does that sit with you? At that moment, I realized Margaret had found my goat, untied my goat, and rode my goat down the hall. And by the way, some of you are still lost in this story. That's a metaphor. I got people going, goats, where's he going with this one? But it's that same woman that would say this to me one day. She said, if you wake up and you are driven by a process or a procedure, you will never make a difference. She said, you have to be driven by a purpose. She taught me that you do not give people permission to ruin your day. She taught me to assign the right value to situations. Most of all, she always said, take pride in who you are. Teach your sons to take pride in that last name that they wear on those jerseys. You tell that son of yours, you tell Josh that every time he strikes out, his grandmother is standing there watching. You see, between my mom and Margaret, they had another theory. that you should never take a play off. It's an athletic term, but let's just call it, don't ever take a moment off. And always know that somebody's watching. Somebody is watching. I got out of the car last night and Glenn said, man, I sure hope I get to take you back. I said, we going to Whataburger? He said, oh yeah. I don't know what impression I made. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. A guy that in the middle of the night has to pick me up in Houston and drive me to Galveston and then take a lonely drive back. But let me share this with you. I have no idea a lot about that guy's family, but I do know this. I have a chance to make a difference. But I'm only going to make it if I understand that when I wake up in the morning, it's because of why I do what I do. Why do I come here? I come here for the same reason. That if there's one person that has forgot and done the reverse of making it powerfully simple. If you've made it complicated, listen, I go back to your list. What 5 people made that difference in your life? You see the purpose, the passion, and the pride. Pride? What's pride? I'm standing in Chicago, Illinois. I'm waiting to fly out on a United Airlines flight. For those of you who understand the 360 program with Delta and the Concierge Key with American, I'm part of the Concierge Key with American, which means that I have earned the right to be shuffled, catered, driven. George Clooney, up in the air, the movie, that's what he was trying to get to, that Concierge Key level with American. It's by invitation only. Nobody even knows the parameters. I tell you all that to say I fly a lot. But as my wife said, you are spoiled. Spoiled. And yet, there's those days that I don't fly American that I have to stand in line. I don't have a car pick me up at the bottom of the plane and take me to the next gate. But I was so glad I wasn't on American this day. All of a sudden, 12 minutes prior to boarding, the captain comes off the plane. When he comes off the plane, he takes the microphone and he doesn't do that captain talk. Folks, this is your captain. Yeah. Just tell us, right? You ever hear that? You ever been on a plane there? Folks, yeah, we're going to be 37,000 feet. We're going to, keep it in the air. Don't hit a mountain or a tree. We're good. And don't talk again. This guy comes off the plane, and I'm like, guy beside me goes, not good, not good. Because, you know, we're in the platinum, plutonium, whatever that line is. Captain says this, ladies and gentlemen, he said, welcome to gate C12 here at O'Hare Airport. He said, my name is Captain Denny Flanagan. And he said, I'm going to be your captain, taking you from Sacramento to Chicago. He said, gotcha. He said, we're in Chicago. We're going Chicago to Sacramento. Just wanted to see if you were listening. Blank stare. He thinks he's funny. We all say, no, you're not. But then he says, if you're going to Sacramento, California on Flight 61 with me, I want to hear a woo-hoo! I don't hear a word. One woman, I hear woo-hoo. And there's always one. There's one that works here. She's the one that comes to the meeting with lifesavers and gum. If you need a stapler, in her purse. You need tape, she's got it. And if we said right now we're going to sing Kumbaya and hold hands, she'd be going, oh, this will be fun. Here's what Captain Denny Flanagan next says. He said, ladies and gentlemen, he said, I got control of this flight because if you don't know what the FAA does, I called the tower. We told them we did pre-flight. The first officer, he's known as the FO, sits in the right seat. He said, we have signed off on this. And he said, now, I'm the commander of this flight. I say when it goes, if it goes. I say who goes and who doesn't go. He said, so let's review. I don't like the energy that I'm feeling. I don't think you want to go to Sacramento. So here's the way it's going to work. If I don't feel the energy and the love, we're going to board late. You're going to miss connections. Because I love what I do, and I want you to enjoy it. So, if you're going to Sacramento, I want to hear a woo-hoo. Guy beside me, literally, woo-hoo! He looks at me and goes, I got to get there. But then it takes a different twist. He looks and he says, ladies and gentlemen, there are 251 of you about to board a 767 to Sacramento. 5 of you have never flown before. 5 of you will be nervous, you're going to be anxious. I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to the 246 that have flown before. I want these 5 people to represent your mother, your father, your grandmother, and your grandfather. I want you to ask yourself, as they begin to board this plane, how would you want your mother or grandmother treated if this was her first flight? What would you want 3 people removed to be saying when they stopped in the aisle to get their reading glasses? What would you want them to be saying? Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a great country, but the problem is we've grown impatient. We've actually grown rude. He said, 251 of you will board, and here's what I'd like. I'd like you to assume that the person in front of you and behind you has never flown before. I'd like you to be helpful. Be courteous. Because he said, I'm going to make you a promise. We're going to make this the best flight you've ever flown. That's guaranteed. He said, as you board this flight, you're going to be greeted by Gail. She's the flight attendant working the A position. The B position will be worked by Meredith. He named 4 flight attendants by name. In the history of me flying, why did I tell you? I have flown millions north of 7 million miles. I've never had one captain come out and announce who was working the positions. When I said about Whataburger and In-N-Out Burger, why did I say Whataburger, In-N-Out Burger? Because if you go through an In-N-Out Burger, the first time I was ever in an In-N-Out Burger, I heard this. Welcome to In-N-Out Burger. Hey, I'm Brad. I'm going to take your order when you're ready. When I got to the first window, he said, Gracie will help you with the second window. He identified the person. Now I got a captain telling me who's in what position. He then says, I mentioned the first officer. He said his name is Ken. He lives in the Chicago area, military, fighter pilot, Air Force. He said, I've never flown with anybody that has better command of that instrument panel than that captain, first officer named Ken. What did he just do to the 5 people that have never flown? He not only calmed them down, he took about 20 more people that are a little apprehensive about flying. Then he put a little boy up in a chair and he said, I want you to meet Frankie. Frankie's 12 years old. He represents one of 82,000 unaccompanied minors that fly every year. He said, Frankie will be going on the plane by himself. This is his mom. I saw tears in her eyes. He said, Frankie's mom is putting Frankie on the plane. Frankie's grandma's on the other end. Now, I've taken the liberty to get the manifest. I know that in 6B and 6C, there is a couple with the same last name. I'm making an assumption you are related and possibly married. Would you please identify yourself prior to the boarding process starting? Didn't wait a second. A woman walked up and said, Captain, my husband and I are in 6B and 6C. He then said, oh, and he went to say something, and she turned from him, took the hands of the mother and said, I'll be in 6B. I have 3 children myself. I will treat your son like he's mine. Now the tears came down. A single moment made a huge difference. I was at a clinic. I saw an orientation film. I saw a guy come in a wheelchair. After I watched the orientation film and the tears streamed down my face, I said, that's amazing. Because in the orientation film, it showed a person going down an escalator, and it said, just found out benign. It showed a man going up, and it said, just got diagnosis malignant. The elevator doors opened. There was a nurse, scared, frightened, going through a divorce. There was a young nurse having first child. It gave like 20 scenarios. And then at the end, it simply said, if you could feel what they feel, see what they see, and hear what they hear as you pass them by, would you treat them differently? I flew for 10 days not knowing. I flew for 10 days and kept calling my wife and saying, you've got to be kidding me. They still have not called. For 10 days, I did not know if they got it all. But I remember walking on an airplane, and I remember a flight attendant with a big smile on her face. And she said, "How are you today?" And I kind of broke down a little bit. I said, I'm going to be all right. I said, "How about you?" She said, "I'm too blessed to be stressed." And then she came back and talked to me. When Denny Flanagan said what he said about those 5 people, and front and back, I started thinking, man, how many times do I rush on the plane? I got to get my bag up. Boy, we started to board. We sat down on an airplane, and within seconds, a guy beside me went, "Is this not the wildest thing you've ever experienced?" I said, "I've never experienced it." He said, "How about the compassion with the mother putting the I said, "Oh, we're talking like this," and then all of a sudden we hear, "Folks, Captain Denny Flanagan from the cockpit. If you've got a black Labrador Retriever right in the belly of the plane, please ring your call button." We hear, "Pong!" Comes walking out. We go to land, and after we land, a total stranger looks at me and says, "Wait a minute, you said you're an author. Wait a minute, you said what's the name of that book again?" I said, "Making a Difference." He goes, "You tell me, have you ever been on a plane that a pilot made a bigger difference?" I said, "No." And then he looked at me and said, "I'll tell you what," he said, "put it this way. Isn't it amazing how one person can totally define the culture of 251 people?" I sat down. I wrote the story of Denny Flanagan. And then everything in my life happens for the reason. 6 months later, final manuscript was ready to be turned in. I took it on the road because I'm an anal compulsive organized perfectionist. I had to read it one more time. And I'm glad I took it. And I'm glad I didn't turn it in, because I checked into a hotel in Philadelphia. I looked at a United crew and I went, "It's got to be him." I walked over. I said, "Hey, I don't mean to intrude," but I said, "Are you Captain Denny Flanagan?" He turned around and said, "Captain Denny Flanagan." He said, "United Airlines." He said, "You ever been on one of my flights?" I said, "I have." He said, "Best flight you've ever flown?" I said, "It was." He had me so emotional and fired up. I said, "Yes." He said, "What can I do for you?" I said, "Well, I'd like to share something with you." I said, "I know that." He goes, "Well, let's have dinner." Hotel restaurant, we go down to have dinner. Sit down, I slide it across. He sees Making a Difference, a matter of purpose, passion, and pride. He takes his finger and imaginarily circles pride. He said, "That's why I do it." He said, "I take pride in what I do every day." I said, "How did you know I was going to ask you why?" He said, "Because everybody does." He said, "You know how many pilots make fun of me? You know how many flight attendants I brief and they have their fingers stuck in a Red Book magazine, they're rolling their eyes, they don't even take the pods out of their ears." Because he said most people that brief them just simply say, "You've heard this before, blah, 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 blah. Okay, you're briefed." He said, "I tell them to take the pods out of their ears and take the finger out of the magazine. And I tell them that I want you to listen to something. And you can make fun of me, but you need to hear this. That you have no idea who's about to board this flight. But let me give you a glimpse. In row 20, there's a woman who was married 28 years. Her husband one day announced, 'I love you, but I'm not in love with you.' He's leaving her. She's on this flight. She's in row 20. Row 14 is a family of 4. They got separated. They don't have seats together. 2 are on one side, 2 are on the other side. They're going to attend the 2 children's grandmother's funeral. That would be their dad's mom. Row 8, middle seat. There's going to be a young lady that went back for her annual checkup to make sure nothing's come back. He said, "I look at them every time I fly every day before I come out to address everybody at the gate, and I tell them, you have no idea who's boarded this plane. Powerfully simple, you have no idea who you're sitting in front of. You have no idea how bad they need what you have. You have no idea that the story you may tell, the emotion you may evoke, may change their life forever." I read the history of this company and the difference it has made. I sat at that restaurant with tears in my eyes, and I said, "That's amazing." He said, "No." He said, "You wrote," I said, "How?" I said, "My book pales in comparison to what you do every day." He said, "So we talked." Because you know why? Because it is about pride. Taking pride in what you do. The excitement, the honor of me being here. You see, the pride, that defines you. The passion, that's what